Okay, recording. It's 8:58 on March 11th, and I'm heading to work. I actually have quite a few points today, so I've got a list. So hopefully I'll have enough time to actually get through all of those things. The past couple days have been kind of sparse for various reasons. Yesterday's clip was at the very end of the day, and I wouldn't say that I was just like mentally wiped or anything like that, but I had just been working all day and had just gone for a long walk. So I didn't really have much things. I didn't have very many interesting things to talk about. The day before that, I was kind of preoccupied with the flooring task. Wasn't quite sure what that was going to entail or how long it would take. So I think this clip should make up for it. For sure. And it's like a crisp 55 degrees out here right now. Potential rain later today, so I have my umbrella with me. This is my last week of work. This is my last Monday. So that's pretty crazy to really think about, that this trip of mine is coming faster and faster. Each day that elapses is one day closer to jumping on the Appalachian Trail and watching all these people on Instagram and YouTube who I follow who are already out there for the season. Good luck to all of you. Weather's been pretty, up and down to say the least. Those of you who started in February are some gosh darn troopers for sure. Some of the rain and the cold temperatures has definitely been a situation I wouldn't really want to be out there for. I really don't do well in that kind of weather condition. Primarily the cold. I can deal with warm, wet, but cold, wet, that's another story. Got a lot of people. Morning. So, heading for the Beltline. 9:01. So the first point of business that I can remember without having to reference my list, last night Erica was going over this presentation that she's going to have to give in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And while she kind of demoed it on me, I was actually working on a bike. First time I've touched one of my bikes in a while in a way that was like meaningful. I did early on in my transformation from biker to walker, put all my bikes in my storage shed so that they weren't taking up so much space and I didn't have to look at them. I'm gonna check to make sure I'm still recording. Alright, we're good. And so last night I took my steel frame Massey bike and I actually kind of stripped it down, took all the bags off of it, all the bells and whistles, and took the clipless pedals off and just put some flat pedals. Really simplified the thing. And it was the first time I put my hands on my bike in a while. And I'll tell you, I had a dream last night that I rode it again. So back to those user dreams, that Psychology Today article talking about people who go sober and then have dreams about relapsing. So last night, I feel like I had several dreams about biking, and I'm thinking about biking this Friday to Lilburn, just to kind of do it. I'd already made plans with my parents to go up to their cabin this Friday. They've been doing a lot of renovations up there, and I haven't been up there for a long time. I can't even remember the last time it would have been, but it's been a while. So I'm thinking about biking over there, heading up to the cabin with them, and my mom and I would come back that Saturday morning, and so I would bike back. So I'll have to consult the weather, and if the weather looks good, then I might end up doing that, but it's going to be a pretty different experience if I do. I won't have like a bicycle computer or any kind of recording device. It really will be like a relapse because I don't want anyone to know. So that's a possibility, and it's an interesting one. I feel like at this point it would be healthy to go for a 25-mile ride, knowing that, I have certain limits that are placed on the bike. Like, even if I wanted to start biking again, I'm leaving for the trail on the 30th, so that's a natural punctuation. But I'm kind of curious to get back on it. Just to see how it is. It's been so long. And again, setting the bike up like I did last night, so that it's just it's as simple as it can be. I don't know, something about that. It feels better. It's kind of like someone returning to like drinking, if they're actually able to do so in moderation. So that's something I'll be thinking about. I should check the weather as soon as I can, just to tentatively know what Friday and Saturday look like. But that Friday will be my first day off, like unemployed. So hopefully I don't, I was thinking when I was letting my dogs out this morning, how coincidental it would be if that ride was like one where I got injured or something. So don't take that for prescience on my part. Take that for coincidence if it ends up happening. So anyway, something to think about, something to look into, a possibility. Stepping back on the bike, I did like the idea a lot of an uninterrupted break, but to be fair, I've been off the bike since November 4th, and now it's March 11th, so I've been off for a long time. Certainly enough to let my body heal, let my mind heal, let everything readjust. And so I feel like I could do this healthfully now, and more to come on that as a possibility in the near future. And let's see what else we got on this list. Okay, so the daylight savings time. Today's day 2 of that, and it certainly feels different out here. Like the degree of sunlight, the birds chirping. It feels like spring is springing, and I just remember this story. I used to take piano lessons when I was a kid, when I was less than 10 years old. I don't remember exactly how old, but I think I'd have to practice for 30 minutes or an hour every day, which is definitely a lot for a kid who doesn't really want to do it. And I just remember one year during daylight savings time, that I kept, at least for 2 weeks, blaming my lack of practice on the changing of the time. And I remember my piano teacher, I believe her name was Miss Beth, she bought it the first time I mentioned it as like an excuse, and then the second time she was a little bit less forgiving of that. So imagine a person who is so thrown by the loss of 1 hour that they aren't able to play piano for 2 weeks. Seemed reasonable to me. I mean, to be fair, I was looking for any reason to not play piano. Just really didn't enjoy that. I did enjoy going to those practices because my sister and I went together. My sibling and I went together. And while they would play, I could watch Pokemon in the other room and wait for my turn, which, our lessons were 30 minutes apiece. So, I could watch an entire episode, which is pretty cool. Get there at the top of the hour, watch an episode, then have to go torture myself for 30 minutes, and then we'd be done. So, that was funny. I've always remembered that, because time changing can be a little disruptive, and it certainly seems archaic and outmoded at this point in life to have the time switch back and forth. Hopefully, along with the legalization of marijuana in my lifetime, I will also see the disbanishment, see the end of time changing. That's something I would definitely vote for. I don't think that a modern industrialized country really needs to be bothered with switching the clocks back and forth, when the reason that we did that was based in farming, as far as I understand. Similarly, circumcision is not something that I think will necessarily be a practice that continues into the far-flung future. So that's my trinity for the morning: legalize marijuana, get rid of daylight savings time, and end circumcision. That's my platform. So that's that note. Let's move on to... Oh, okay. I'll go to the heavy stuff, and then I'll save the more humorous light thing for the end. So, I think I've explored anxiety a lot on these clips so far. Again, I don't think I'd necessarily describe myself as a fundamentally anxious person, but I think of all the mental afflictions that people can suffer, anxiety tends to frame the one that I have the most experience with. And I think it also kind of stems back to me realizing what death was when I was really, really young. I saw my grandfather, my mom's dad, dying in the hospital of cancer, and he just looked so miserable, and his feet were purple, and he was prone in a hospital bed. He just looked like he was in immense pain. He might have actually been on painkillers and just not had any expression, but it's hard to look at someone with purple feet and think that they're doing all right. And so I remember being really young and seeing that and just being like, oh, wow, the bubble burst. My innocence was gone. I just realized, there's no reason that you should enter this world or exit this world in anything like a fairy tale manner. We wish and we hope fervently for a good life, good health, happiness, love, etc. But, the universe, the world, biology, all these things are impartial, and there's no maliciousness to it, which makes it even harder to accept, because you want something to hate what that robs you of your health. You don't want to accept that. You don't want that to be something that you're subject to. And so the fact that anything that happens to you is sort of just the luck of the draw, it's really upsetting. And I think that's sort of where my desire for control comes from. It's a chicken and the egg situation, because it's like, I don't know if my OCD tendencies to clean and organize and to be very structured and, again, in control precedes my fear of death, or if my fear of death is what precedes my want for control. Definitely they're intermingled, and since I believe in fate to a certain extent, I don't think there's any other way I could have ever grown up, So, all that just to say, I think I had the, existential seeds of crisis sown early in life, and health in particular has always just been something that I can very easily obsess with. It's why I can exercise ad nauseum. It's why I can, with fairly good regularity, control my diet. And, I see similar symptoms in my sibling as well, and to different degrees my mother, and pretty much to no degree my father. He's pretty much the opposite of the three of us in that respect. So, pretty obvious genetic tree there. But, two instances after viewing my dying grandfather come to mind that I wanted to reference, because I think they, again, were foundational in some of the anxiety that I feel to this day, and am working through and working out of. And I guess we'll go through one of them first, which is psychosomatic type anxiety. And there was this guy in my elementary school named Julio, and I still remember his face. He had a very Aztec or Mayan type face, when I see pictures of those people, like the Mesoamericans, he looks very much like those people, the features, sort of a broad face, shorter in stature, very smiley. He was a good guy. But one night, I remember hearing, well, it wasn't, I didn't hear that night, but I remember hearing at school after one night that his appendix had burst and that he had to go to the hospital, and that there was like no real signs or symptoms of the appendicitis that he had until the thing actually ruptured and he got, dreadfully sick. And so I remember being in elementary school and being very scared that my appendix would explode. And this was early in life, so I didn't really have a concept of where organs were in the body, let alone all of the organs that there were in the body. It's funny, like, no heart ever beat better because you thought about it. No breath ever came easier because you focused on it. These things that are controlled by the autonomic nervous system, as soon as you start to think about it with your prefrontal cortex, you interrupt the natural ebbing and flowing of all those systems. And the funny thing is, there are organs that you never even think about, that I never even think about. And, I don't obsess about trying to control them or worry about how they're functioning. I hardly ever think about my liver or my kidneys or my gallbladder or my intestines or my stomach, unless it hurts. But, it's funny, just because in my life, I've spent a lot of time worrying about having cancer or getting cancer. When I was younger, worried a lot about my appendix exploding. And now, I occasionally worry that I'm going to have a heart attack. Thanks, Erica, my girlfriend. I would say that she seeded those thoughts in particular. Not on purpose, but she used to have a lot of anxiety about her heart, and I think it put the idea in my mind, just like Julio. So, here we go. We're seeing the thread here. We're seeing how this is possible. So, all that just to say that I developed this psychosomatic pain in, like, the area that I thought was where my appendix was. Got a truck coming up. I need to be careful here. Let's see if I can get around this bull squash. Dusty. The dusty trail. So I thought it was interesting, just reflecting on that. I thought the appendix was a lot further down in the pelvis area than it was. And so occasionally I would get so worried about it that I would actually start to swear that I could feel pain in the area that I thought the appendix was at. But, later in life, this was before the internet, which I don't know if that would have actually made it better or worse, because then as soon as I realized that I was thinking about the appendix being in the wrong spot, then I could have realized maybe that I was okay. Man, dusty out here. And so, again, it's a foundational experience that kind of preloads the software that I still work with today, cognitively speaking. And the last point, as I get to Bill Kennedy and Glenwood, is I remember actually being really young. This is the same era as the Julio appendix situation. I used to be really afraid of this character that I called Boobly Jesus, which was based on a painting of Jesus, one of the Passion paintings of him dying on the cross that they show in the movie Jesus Christ Superstar. For some reason, the painting really affected me, and I was afraid that this weird, gelatinous, two-dimensional figure of Jesus would be like crawling through my house, and so that really scared me when I was young, sometime before I turned 10. Asking a few more people. So anyway, I remember one time having a friend spend the night. I don't remember exactly who it was. It might have been Eben Mantis, which is like one of the weirdest names of anyone I've ever known. But basically, we were sleeping upstairs in my house's bonus room, which is above the garage. It was an addition my parents built onto the house. We were one of the few people in Florida that had like an upstairs. That wasn't very common in our neighborhood. Off the street real quick. And that night, I just remember being so scared of this Jesus creature that I slept with the covers over my head, which wasn't something that I did very often, but I was so scared that I had to do it. And I woke up at some point, and I don't really know what happened, but I remember getting out of bed. I think I was pretty hot, like warm-wise, just my body was really hot from being under the covers. And I walked to my parents' room, and in the process of walking to my parents' room, I don't know if I was scared of the Jesus thing or if I was going there because I was trying to get away from it or what the situation was. But by the time I got there, I was like gasping for breath. For some reason, I just couldn't breathe. And I got to their room, and I don't even know if I was able to talk to them like through shrieking for breath and stuff like that. But they obviously freaked out because, I showed up and I couldn't breathe, and they weren't previously asleep. I'm trying to cross to another person. So they didn't know what to do, and they did the only thing I think they thought they could, which is probably what I would do too, and we went to the hospital. And during my trip to the hospital, I basically got better, fully recovered. There was nothing wrong with me, nothing actually with a physical manifestation. I had just like scared myself into this really, really worked up state, like basically worked myself into hysterics. But it was funny because the next morning, after I got back from the hospital and everything was fine, I told Eben that I had gone to the hospital that night. He slept through the whole thing. This guy, obviously, different psychological situation for him. And the only way I could prove that I had gone to the hospital was because I still had like my intake bracelet, which I thought was funny. So yeah, those are some thoughts that came up this morning, listening to Joey Diaz's podcast with Brody Stevens. Mental health has been on my mind a lot since Brody passed away, and since I have a friend out here in Atlanta, shout out to Ben Wills, who's going through some mental health issues. Pass more people. Morning. So mental health is an interesting thing because it's very, very fragile, and it's also, to a large degree, I think, predetermined. I don't really know how well someone can escape whatever their plot in life is. But I think, I'm lucky enough to have one that is, what do they call diabetes? It's manageable. Yeah. I don't think no one gets out alive. And so, grass is always greener on the other side, but you're always on your side of the green grass. And I think being aware of your own particularities, you can sort of metacognate and try to help yourself work through things. And I think talking out loud helps that. Thankfully, I have been imbued enough with my psychological training. I did, after all, get a BA in psychology from Georgia State, to be able to be introspective and kind of view myself somewhat objectively. Obviously, can never do that 100% of the time, because at the end of the day, I still feel my feelings, and feelings are a hard thing to rationalize or refute. But, I do appreciate these conversations with myself so that I can kind of speak these things into existence and see them as more well-defined objects, so to speak. Which brings me to my last point. Hyper objects. That's a new buzzword that I heard recently. I don't remember. Oh yeah, I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast yesterday, and he had some guy on who had written a book about how the world was basically doomed. One of those people who's all about like global warming and stuff, which I wouldn't say is untrue, but the whole system of the world is so large that I am a little bit skeptical of anyone who says that this or that is the case, or that something is too late. I mean, something might be the case for sure, but the idea that we couldn't do anything about it, I don't know, people always say stuff like that, like human beings will never fly, human beings will never go to space, human beings, you know, there's always naysayers who think that something can't be done. And I think, you know, just at the moment when humanity has its back to the wall, that's when like creativity and necessity come together. Well, it's like, well, duh. I mean, creativity, or no, what is it? Something, it's not desperate need, but something is the mother of invention. What is it? Oh man, it's a phrase that I've used a lot in my head. Essentiality is the mother of invention. Damn it, what is it? I don't remember, but something to that effect, where it's the need and the moment that bring out the solution, and it's hard to make a solution before the need arises. So I like this idea of hyper objects, like something that is bigger than the human mind can capacitate and hold. You know, listening to that Joe Rogan episode a few weeks ago, or maybe just last week, I guess, with the Twitter CEO, I think that was my biggest complaint about Tim Pool, was just that he was viewing Twitter and this whole electronic platform that Twitter is as like this very boiled down and simplistic thing. And honestly, I think it's a hyper object, just like, as I mentioned, you know, vast physical distances in the universe. Humans can't really picture that in truth. I mean, you might say that you have an idea of what it means to be 100 million light years away from something, but those numbers aren't commensurate with anything on Earth, so you really can't even imagine what it would be like to go in a straight line for, I don't know, even 1 light year. I don't remember how many miles it is to Mars. I know it's in the billions, maybe even trillions. And so just, you know, no human can really picture or imagine what it would be like to go that distance. It's a hyper object. It's beyond our cogitation. Let me run across this street real quick. Ooh, jeez. These fucking branches and these trees slapping my face. So that's something that I'll keep with me. I'm actually going by some trees right now that I pulled the limbs off of. These trees, I don't know what kind of tree that it is, but there's several of them on a row. I'm going down the row right now, and there is a distinct lack of branches hitting me in the face, and that's because many weeks ago I went down this row trying to kill some time before I met someone somewhere, and I pulled the branches that were drooping down into my face off the trees. It was crazy how easy it was for most of them. I just had to get it at the right angle and pull it right, and the branch would come right off. So for about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 trees or so, I just pulled all these branches off, and it was awesome because going down this exact path at night, I was always afraid that I'd have a branch go in my eye, which was not in unlikely situation. It was very possible that would happen. So I'm now walking on a field of victory, and I have about 30 minutes to get to work, which should work out pretty well. I think I can get to the beginning of the Beltline, the East Side Beltline, in the next 12 minutes. But in order to help me with that, I'm going to end it here before I even get to the porta potty that I've been stopping at during these clips. So I can switch to music to really pump me up to get me there. So for now, 9:28, crossing the street. It's a nice Monday morning, my last one, and tomorrow will be my last Tuesday. So, things are moving along. It's crazy. This whole thing is crazy. And there's a definite sense of rebirth here. So I'll talk to you tomorrow about whatever comes from that. Bye for now.